Again, today is October 1st, 2022, and October 1st, 1960 was supposed to be a very, very, very important day for Nigeria, that union called Nigeria. It was supposed to be a day where the indigenous people of Nigeria got their independence from British colonial rule. So today we're going to be talking about, did that happen? And what is the significance of what happened in 1966? And are the indigenous people of Nigeria still independent? Do they still have their independence? This is what we're going to talk about today. And unfortunately, the overwhelming answer is that no, indigenous Nigerians have had their independence hijacked. They've had their sovereignty taken away. They've had their self-governance, the self-determination, a right that they have under the UN Charter and other international laws, has been hijacked from them. And in fact, they are living under apartheid. Now, there are some who disingenuously say that it cannot be apartheid in Nigeria because the Fulani, who are the perpetrators of the apartheid, are Nigerians. That is a lie. That is a lie. The Fulani in Nigeria are not, in fact, indigenous to Nigeria. They came to Nigeria late 18th century. And after they got there, Uthman Dan Fodio waged a jihad against the North and tried to take it through all of Nigeria, but failed. So when you look at the definition of apartheid, that being a foreign group or nation that has come to subjugate the indigenous people of the land, what is going on in Nigeria is apartheid. There is no tribe called Hausa Fulani, and I dare anyone, any historian, any investigative journalist to come and show us a tribe called Hausa Fulani. That is a false narrative that is being used to deceive not just the indigenous people, but also the world, and place the Fulani name, the Fulani tribe in Nigeria. But that cannot be held up by history. So we have the case of indigenes not actually being able to celebrate October 1st, 1960, because for them, in July of 1966, their independence was stolen and their nations were collapsed into what is known today as Unitary Nigeria. So I am going to come to Balade, so that you can give us your opening remarks about what we're going to be talking about. The fact that the federations, that the nations that we see behind me, and I'm going to put that up, these nations that existed in 1960, and in 1963, the Midwestern region was added, no longer existed. Let's get your thoughts, and then we'll get right into it and talk about, various elements of what we need to talk about, right? What is a nation? What is a country?
Okay.
Let's get your thoughts.
Okay. Out of independence, which date was October 1st, 1960, there had been running prior to that because it was under indirect rule. So the regions had been ruling themselves as independent states prior to 1960. So come 1960, they now said, oh, we got independence, go and do your own thing, you're a nation. But you're part of an umbrella corporation called Nigeria. Now, in 1963, Nigeria, as it was said then, said, we no longer want to be a commonwealth. We're going to be a republic. So when they said that, this is what I just found out this week, is that they no longer had a governor general, because a governor general was appointed from Britain, through the monarchy and all of them over here, to go and help administer Nigeria under that. Unfortunately, Nigeria said, well, we don't want to be a Commonwealth as of 1963, so they became a republic, and they went on for them. Now, come 1966, I think, January 1966, there was a coup, which was a failed coup. In fact, most coups in Nigeria ultimately failed, because somebody will plan a coup, right? He'll do something, says, I'm there, then other guys will come in, take him down, say, you're not doing that. But they will now say, all right, we're going to be the powers that be anyway. So that coup failed. When Rosie came in, he told the politicians, you can't have political activity because it's the nation, the situation in the nation does it, it's not viable for that. So he said, until the situation returns to normal, the military is going to be in control. But come July, I think it was, they said he made the blunder of saying he's going to put Nigeria under a unitary government. Now, the Northern saw that if that happens, the East is going to take over Nigeria, and they're never going to ever be in a position to have power ever again. So they kicked against him and took him down. And that's when our problem really started.
Right. So in 1966, we had that military, the second coup that occurred. And that second coup now brought the military. And from then forward, we had a situation where the basis, the agreement that was made at independence to keep these regions, these nations, self-governing and autonomous, was broken. And as we talked about this before, Ojukwu, who was part of the Eastern region, was one of the few people, I guess, that had the foresight to understand what was actually going on. He understood that now the autonomy, the sovereignty of these regions had been taken and they needed to be restored. And that's when they had the Aburi meeting that they had in Ghana. And this was supposed to restore the sovereignty, take the central government out of the regions, maintain the regions so that the regions would have their autonomy, which is another word for sovereignty, and be able to govern themselves, have charge of their assets, etc., etc. But you all know what happened instead. There was a war. And, you know, and I'm going to kind of talk off topic here because this is important. The question that I keep asking that I cannot find an answer, Bolada, you can comment on this, is, given that all of this is known, given that Nigeria was never meant to be unitary, and these regions were self-governing and autonomous, and all this information is out there, why did the United Nations, why has the world kept silent and allowed this apartheid to continue to occur that it's killing indigenous Nigerians?
Yeah.
I've been struggling to, besides greed and, etc., but this is known facts.
First, I'm going to say,
known facts.
First, I'm going to say there's one thing that happened. I think I wrote some videos to this effect. You know, the oil operations in Nigeria was controlled by Shell BP. Now, during the war, or prior to the war, Britain had said to the LPP, you are going to go with your checkbook and go to the federal government and tell them you are gonna be the ones in control of Nigerian oil in the eastern Nigeria, not the eastern Nigeria government on the ground. They didn't talk to them because the federal said, no, you are going to talk to the federal government of Nigeria and you were going to get control of the oil. Now, prior to that, the Nigerian military were already being used by the oil, by Shell BP to be their strong arm if anything goes on in the oil industry. So the picture was already there. If the East say, we want our oil, we don't want you in there, Shell BP people say, oh, Nigerian army, go and settle these people out because we're the sovereigns, we're the owners of this oil, they don't own it. And the Nigerian government, Nigerian army in cahoots would do that. So now come to 1966 or when the war started, first of all, I think what Nigeria made sure they did was they cut off Biafra from the ocean front, so that Biafra was landlocked, so they could not get any access to the ocean. Now, also, they've now put the oil producing places on the different states that were not controlled by the hardcore Biafra. So they were saying, oh, we're not part of you anyway. So that now created the problem for them where they could not say, we can go and take the oil because it's not, no, it couldn't, because it wasn't legally anymore in their states of control. And that is why the war went down that way. Had it been somebody, maybe Ojukwu or somebody said, right, you know what, we are going to go for the oil and control it anyway. And they took control of the oil and said, nope, nope to Shell, nope to the Nigerian army, and say, this is out, and they put it under their control, and they fought to control it. I think the war would have come out differently. But
again, you know, what I'm asking, Bolade, is this. These facts are known. The fact that Nigeria was not meant to be unitary. So why is the unitary Nigeria being allowed to exist? Why hasn't the world come to the aid of the indigenous Nigerians who are laboring?
I would
killed.
I would think it comes to the fact that the powers that be have said it's going to be that way, because the United Nations, all of them knew what was going on. The British knew what was going on. The Americans, they all knew what was going on, but they chose not to look at the Igbo people at the time as the people that needed their own nation. They looked at Nigeria and saying, oh, you know what, the federal government, they can be in control, we don't care. And all the atrocities that went on that they knew about, that were documented to them, they just turned a blind eye to it. They just did. And as far as I was concerned, I keep on telling people now, I said, look, Ojukwu, as far as I was concerned, was a national hero because he tried to do stuff. First of all, he helped us for the first coup in Nigeria. That was the beginning. Then he tried to help restore the order of Nigeria, in that Nigeria had an independence. That's what he tried to do, which they basically made it blow up in their faces, and the war ensued. But they made sure that was happened, because had it been he got that way, because basically, think about it, the northern region would have been there, the western region would have been there, the midwestern region, they would have all been there, and they could all say, wow, we got this. And I think they would, if they understood what was going on, they'll say, right, we would fight to keep this. We don't want the federal government coming in and make sure they don't have a strong federal government. But because of some people's greed, they made sure that, oh, you know what, we're going on this unit thing, which they wrapped up as a federal government, which was no federal, because what they did, they created 12 states. That's what Ogawan did to solve the problem. They said, oh, you know what, Oduka's playing this game. Okay, I'll do the same thing, create 12 states. So when you saw 12 states, hang on, we've got 12 unitary states. No, you did not have 12 unitary states. You had 12 states that were under the military thing, under unity government, and the government, all the governors answered to the new federal government. No, not the regions. They didn't have their own constitutions, because remember, all the regions had their own constitution. These 12 states had no constitution. They answered to the federal structure.
So again, anyway, we're we're going to move on. But the point that I was trying to make is this: that these are all facts. These are all facts. The fact that Nigeria was not meant to be unitary, the fact that back before Nigeria even became independent, that it was clear that because of the different ethnicities, any attempt to create a unitary government was certainly going to result in apartheid, because any one group that had the numbers would control. And this was before the fraudulent 1979 and 1999 constitution, right? Now, when you come to those constitutions, then you see like a wholesale implementation of unitary Nigeria, hijacking the nations that existed and that was agreed to, and that Ojukwu fought to maintain, in which 3 million, that's the number that we're hearing, over 3 million Biafrans were killed, and countless numbers. We saw those horrific pictures of those children being starved to death while the world watched. But that is history. We are now in 2022. Even though the government has prevented the teaching of history in Nigeria, this is all facts. So we have different groups that are crying and asking for our sovereignty, and we're not getting much of a response.
No.
We're not getting much of a response, even though, as you can see, the northern region, the western region, et cetera, those were all bona fide nations. Those are all bona fide nations. So let's talk about what the federation is, because Nigeria today is said to be a federation. Let's talk about what is this, a federation? A federation is a union of nations, or a union of partially self-governing provinces, states, or other regions under a central government. But when you look at Nigeria, we have states, as Bolade said. Those states are not self-governing. Those states are not autonomous. Those states have no sovereignty. Those states have no they have no control over their assets. They don't even have a police. And as we have seen the arguments in the news recently, where Governor Autumn signed a law back in 2021, allowing for the vigilantes, and the vigilantes, these are the volunteer forces to protect the people, because the federal government has failed to protect the indigenous Nigerians, the Christians, and the moderate Muslims, and other folks that have their other beliefs from the Fulani herdsmen, Boko Haram, ISWAP, and other terrorists who are killing with impunity. They're not being prosecuted, and they're not being to book. So the Benue State is taking steps because they are being massacred. And why? This is the middle belt people. That is the and that's the purple in the bottom of the picture here. That's the middle belt. The middle belt is the place where Othman Danfodio could not get through to get to the rest of Nigeria. So now they are massacring those in the middle belt. Well, last year the UN said that in just the Northeast, which is part of the middle belt, 350,000 had already been killed. Now these numbers are being reported very low before. Less than 10% of that was being reported. But Reuters reported last year that the revised numbers is 350,000, and nobody said anything. CNN didn't pick it up, BBC didn't pick it up, ABC didn't pick it up, Times of Israel, Times of India, none of these newspapers, none of these magazines picked up on what is actually going on in Nigeria. So let's talk about the fact that Nigeria is not a federation. There are no nations in Nigeria currently, which is why we're calling it unitary. Go ahead, Balade.
You know, I've almost forgot what I was going to say. Yes, something happened. I mean, some people, I would assume they were Nigerians in diaspora, most likely could have been in America, might have originated from the Middle Belt. They now sent a communique to the House, to the Senate, and saying, "Oh, this is happening in the Middle Belt states. Could you discuss it and see what could come up?" And they said, because these people are not in Nigeria, they cannot say anything about anything that's happening in Nigeria. That was the first thing they said about it. Now, I'm not quite sure. Did some people say, "Oh, you know what? They're Nigerians. They're supposed to have their say because this is their Senate as well. They're part and parcel of Nigeria." Then they said, "Okay, we'll allow this thing to be tabled before us." And I think at that point in time, it was tabled. But the Nigerian government, the whole cabal system is a cabal, and it's an evil cabal because, right, if you know, the Sultan of Sokoto, he wields the power. Like I said in one of the times, I said, if you remember, the Sultan of Sokoto is also what they call one of the national leaders, the traditional leaders. He was the only one at that time that was killed in the first coup. The other traditional leaders were left alone. All of them were left alone. Why was that? Because of the power he was. Because had it been they left him in power, it's like he didn't do anything. Because he could actually turn around and get the Sokoto Caliphate, as it was then, to do stuff and actually neutralize that coup either way and make it useless because he held the power.
Okay, so let's listen to what Amada Bello had to say about, you know, what actually occurred in 1960. Okay, so because we always want to work with facts, right? Yeah. We're talking about the fact that we had nations, right? These regions were nations. They had self-governance. So let's listen to what he has to say. Oh, sorry. Okay, let me restart.
In the name of God, the compassionate and the merciful, let thanks be given to God everywhere in the northern region of Nigeria for the blessing of self-government which we have received this day through his help.
For the blessing of self-governance. For the blessing of self-governance. Okay, so I just wanted to, I'm going to stop sharing this now because I just wanted to just say what was on the ground was self-governance, self-determination, where they had control over what happened. So we're going to talk next. Let's talk about what is a nation. Okay, we're just going to go through this real quick. The reason why it's important is so that we can establish the fact that these regions were nations. And so when you remove these regions and create states that are linked to the federal government that has no nation, you have removed, you know, it's a group of homogeneous people. They are self-governing, they're autonomous. One thing that you will know is that Nigeria is not a group of homogeneous people. Unitary Nigeria is not a group of homogeneous people. And how do we know this? There's the Igbo, one of the main tribes. There is the Yoruba, another main tribe, complete different language, complete different culture, different type of dressing, different sound of voice, everything, right? We've got the Midwest, we've got the Middle Belt. right? And then we've got Northern Nigeria where we have the Hausas, not the Fulanis. The Hausas are the indigenous, the original indigenous people of Nigeria. It's not a homogeneous group of people. So when you look at Unitary Nigeria, it cannot be a nation. Okay, it cannot be a nation. Okay, so they have control of their assets, self-governing. They had control of their assets, control of their borders. They had their own constitution, as Bolade mentioned. They had their own flags. That's what you're seeing behind me. It's the Nigerian flag, but each one had their different coat of arms, which made each region different from the other. They had their own leaders, their own elections, etc., etc. So definitely these regions qualified as nations, right? They had self-governors, had a constitution, etc., etc. They had their own presidents, etc., right? And regional elections were actually held on October 11, 1965, right? So, and Akintola was re-elected as a prime minister for the Western region. So anyone that would come up and tell you that these regions did not qualify as nations, here is the proof. And this is out there, guys. All you have to do is Google this. You will find the elections, you will find their constitutions, you will find their flags, which is the flag with their coat of arms in the middle. All of this is out there. And so they definitely qualified as
states,
nations,
countries, nations,
right? It's qualified as nations. So let's talk about what actually is going on with Indigenous Nigerians today. Do they have control of their assets anymore? Is there any geographical area in Nigeria that represents the Eastern region? Is there a body that has governance over the Eastern region, over the Western region, over the Midwestern, over the Middle Belt, which is supposed to have been carved out as part of the independence agreement, and over the Northern region? Do we have any governmental body that is over those groups of homogeneous people? Bolade.
No, there isn't. There isn't at all, because what they've done is that they've made sure that the so-called indigenous peoples now, if they want any money to do anything, which they can't do what they want with it, they have to come to Asurok in Abuja and say, oh, we need money for this, we need money for that. Okay, there's your pocket money, go and spend it wisely. That's all that happens.
Well,
so
there isn't such thing as wisely, because there's a lot of money that is given out that you have no accountability for.
Oh yes, true.
So let's not talk about wisely, because there's no such thing as wisely.
I remembered something when I was up in Bauchi. My uncle said there was a guy, they used to be calling him Anthony George. Now what it was, the Kaduna State at the time, they did not have a chief justice. So what it was, this gentleman, who they would fondly called Anthony George, was a white man, and he was the Attorney General. So instead of say Attorney General, they call him Anthony George. Anthony George was, I think, what was he doing there? Couldn't they find somebody else in Nigeria to put in that post? No, they had to go and find a white person, because these same Northerners, or Fulani anyway, these what they said, listen, if we let somebody from the East or the West come and take a government position up here over us, what will happen is that they'll never leave there anymore. We won't be able to get our foot in the door in that place. So we rather the white man or an English person has those posts, because he's not going to stay long, and we could bring up our own and put them in there. And it says, if that ain't going to happen, we'll only let them come in when we say, oh, we know we've got one of our own who is going to understand them and take him out. And
okay, so let's continue talking about this Federation of Nigeria. that does not
exist.
So today is supposed to be the independence of this federation that we're talking about, and it does not exist because it died in the second coup of 1966 and has not come back. So we've got a rogue government that has been in place for how many years now? Since 1966 to today is how many years? Somebody can help me. 26?
Well, 2000, that was 20 years.
66, that is, we're in 2022, that is 56 years.
56 years,
56 years.
Of
56 years.
Yes, of a fraud.
No investigative journalists except like Bernard Henri Levy, for instance. And I think there was somebody else that, that joined him when he was doing his presentation to the United States House, right? That actually talked about what we're talking about here. He actually brought this up. And I am going to find that video so that we can play that. But he actually brought that up, okay? Because all these years, everybody has been interacting with Nigeria when Nigeria doesn't exist.
Could I just say something? I watched Buhari this year again at the United Nations. Now, there's a lady that was sitting on the high table next to the Secretary General. Now, somebody has told me that this lady is a Fulani. Not only is she Fulani, she's supposed to be from Nigeria. Something plays into what's he called, Buhari himself. Now, this lady holds a lot of power in the United Nations, and she's the one who keeps on bringing up Buhari to bring him up to the United Nations. But then, no, sorry, I'm going to say something different now. Then Buhari did something which made me say, yeah, okay, did the right thing for a change.
Right.
He would not go to the Queen's funeral.
Okay, let's move on.
Let's move on.
What we need to talk about. Let's talk about the fact that all these years, Nigeria has been a fraudulent enterprise and has been operating, doing deals, having no refinery, not one single working refinery in the South where the oil originates. I think you can pretty much call that apartheid, right?
Yeah.
And at that very refinery, right, in the NNPC that handles the oil that is in the South and not in the North, you will find that the top 20 people in the NNPC and even deeper are all Fulani.
Yep.
There are no Southerners there.
Nope.
And yet we have quote unquote federal character in the Constitution. But why does character not work?
There's also one thing they do.
Because it's unenforceable. So I'm going to go to, before you continue, Bolade, I am going to go to the video because I found it. Where I think his name is Mr. Piero Tosi. And he is let me get this right, Piero Tosi, senior advisor to Rep. Chris Smith. This is senior advisor to Rep. Chris Smith, where he is speaking about this about what's going on in Nigeria. And give me a second, let me go back to there so that I can get to it real quick without having to go through different things. This is what we're going to share. Let's see, is this what I need? Okay, so let's listen to him because it's really so important, okay, to hear what he has to say.
The narrative that the State Department and the Inside the Beltway consensus has, and you mentioned, viewing it in terms of former herder conflict driven by climate change, which may be an aspect, but it is not the major issue. And it is important, I think, to identify who are the perpetrators. And in this case, it is Fulani extremists. It is ethno-religious chauvinism. And it is something really that is impacting all Nigerians who are not Fulani. It is the Christians, certainly in the Middle Belt, are targeted, but also Muslims. If you're Yoruba Muslim, you are targeted as well. If you are Shia Nigerian, Kaduna, you are also targeted. What's also important, I think, to understand is that the government under President Buhari is dominated by Fulani. There's been an overall Fullonization of all aspects of the security apparatus of the military and key positions within the Nigerian government, including the Supreme Court, where the Chief Justice a number of years ago, Walter David, was removed and replaced by Fulani essentially. So that dynamic is very important, and there's a certain unwillingness and a blindness and a lack of a will to see what is actually happening. Now, what is interesting, I think, what is illustrated is that if you go back a decade ago, there was similarly a unwillingness on the part of the State Department, in particular, but the intelligence, really to identify Boko Haram for what it was as a terrorist movement. And we can go into nuances. Boko Haram is different. It's Salafist and whatnot. But there was real resistance, particularly under Hillary Clinton when she was Secretary of State, and Johnny Carson, he's Assistant Secretary for Africa, to designate Boko Haram as a foreign terrorist organization. To give credit where it's due, that changed when John Kerry was Secretary of State and when Thomas Greenfield became Assistant Secretary. And Boko Haram was designated a foreign terrorist organization. A positive, and also get into a negative, we now realize that Boko Haram and its offshoots, such as Islamic State West Africa, such as Ansaru, are Islamists with an agenda that they're committed to mass atrocities. And that has become an accepted view, whereas before it was not. It was resisted and fought. The problem here, though, I think, is that now it's very convenient to put all extremism in Nigeria and West Africa, for that matter, more broadly, into the Boko Haram basket and its other affiliated or splinter organizations, and not to address the larger agenda of Fullonization. And it's also, I think,
I'm going to stop here because we need to talk about this. This is powerful information. This is powerful information that is coming from the senior advisor to a representative of the US. Why isn't this being picked up everywhere? We keep still hearing from CNN, from BBC, from the UK Parliament, the UK House of Lords, from around the world, really, about this narrative of herder-farmer conflict. This herder-farmer conflict, when you break it down, let's understand what people are actually accepting. They are accepting that it is okay for the Fulani herdsmen not to purchase land and have ranches in the rainforest area where they can have their cattle ranches. Means the world is accepting this, that it is okay for these Fulani to want to have their cattle destroy streets, destroy farms, defecate in houses, defecate in offices, in schools, go wherever they want, attack. And they have attacked people on the street. That this is okay, and even worse, that it is okay for hundreds of thousands of people to be terrorized. Hundreds of thousands of landowners, millions in fact, because we have over 4 million displaced from their land. Over 4 million. It is okay for these Fulani herdsmen who have no rights to the land to kill hundreds of thousands of people, displace them from their land in the name of herder-farmer conflict? How does this make sense to the world? How does this narrative still continue when churches are being attacked, when school children are being abducted for ransom, when the highways in the Middle Belt to the south, when all these attacks are happening in Christian and moderate Muslim areas? How can you justify saying that it is only Boko Haram when the news is out every day, every single day? Fulani herdsmen, Fulani herdsmen, Fulani herdsmen, Fulani herdsmen, Fulani herdsmen. And you say that herder-farmer conflict is a viable argument? I personally am shocked. So Balade, please help me. We're talking about, we're talking about that video. What he was saying is powerful, the Fullonization agenda, right?
There was a video that I watched, and this gentleman says, well, really, if everybody wants to do his business and they're Fulani saying, we're Fulani herders, why don't they say, oh, you know what, we're going to buy the land or rent the land or whatever, lease the land, like that's put it that way because we're not giving them the land, lease this land for our cattle and put our cattle on there. And the wider thing is now saying global warming. It is what's causing these conflicts. On not looking into the fact that for years there was a gentleman's kind of agreement between the farmers and these same herdsmen that these cattle would allow to come in the dry season, because remember they eat dry grass, and that's when all this stuff is going to be dry anyway. They let them in at that time. Other times, no. So what these people did when they got Buhari, they said, oh, Buhari told us we can do whatever we want. If you want to live, give us your land. That's what that's the narrative they will say. You pick up any of them anywhere. Boko Haram, Fulani herdsmen, they will tell you this. Oh, Buhari is the only one who can tell us to leave this land. We're not, if you give us your land, we probably let you live. That's what they're saying.
But again, we're talking about the number of people. The number of people that have been displaced. We're talking about the number of people that have lost their farms, the number of people that have lost their lives. We have over 400,000 that have been killed. Over 400,000 refugees that have left Nigeria because of Fulani herdsmen. Not Boko Haram, Fulani herdsmen. We have over 4 million that have been displaced and are in IDP camps. And the federal government has abandoned them. They are not taking care of these indigenous farmers in IDP camps. But Buhari is sending $1 million to Afghanistan.
Nigeria gave Nigeria.
He just sent what? How many billion? 9 billion worth of security vehicles to Niger Republic.
Yep.
While the states, he is refusing. He is saying erroneously that the states cannot have security. Well, when the federal government has said categorically that they cannot will not protect the people from the Fulani, from his kinsmen, the Fulani herdsmen, the states have to rise up, just like Autumn has done, and UNIPA, NINAS, OPSUM, Middle Belt Patriotic Front have all called on the state governments of the Middle Belt to the south to put in place vigilante groups, put the law in place that Autumn has put in place, to arm them, and then to take money that is earmarked for the police and security to go into these vigilantes, get them AK-47s, AK-49s, get them the training that they need, the vehicles that they need, the motorcycles that they need. Because we're dealing with a group that we understand has been trained in Mauritania, they've been trained in in other Arab countries.
Libya comes to another thing comes to point. Remember,
Exactly. So this is what we're talking about. This is ethnic cleansing. This is genocide. This is not herder farmer narrative.
if you want to understand a bit like where the guns are coming from, remember when Libya went down?
Let's not go into guns. We want to focus our attention on talking about the independence and what is going on with the people. Okay, let's just kind of stay focused on that topic because we really want the world to understand what's going on, right? We're talking about the fact that the indigenous Nigerians have lost, they've had their independence hijacked. And the narrative that's going on in the world is not recognizing that fact. This is history. So some of what we're trying to do, and we're going to be doing before the end of the year, is to work with history departments and have them produce a paper that will talk about who really are the indigenes of Nigeria, that will talk about what really was agreed to at independence and compare that to what is existing today. Look at what the definition of apartheid is and determine if Nigeria in fact qualifies that the indigenous people are living under apartheid, right? So to that end, as we're talking about apartheid, because we talked a little bit about what's going on in the NMPC, right? But in that video, did you hear what he said about who is on top of defense, who is on top of the court system, right? Even the school chancellors are being changed to Fulani. The NMPC is Fulani. The FIRS is Fulani. INEC, Fulani. Census, Fulani. Money printing has now been given. Did you guys see that this week? Was it last week? Money printing has now gone to Buhari's wife's brother. Another Fulani. Dangote has a monopoly of key items in Nigeria. He's Fulani. He is the wealthiest man in Africa that is strangulating the people by this ridiculously high prices. A monopoly can exist if it is producing lower prices than what the open market could produce. But that's not what's going on in Nigeria. We even find that if you go to other countries, the products that he is exporting is at lower pricing than what the Nigerians are having to pay for rice, for cement, and other products that Dangote, the Fulani monopoly magnate, is literally taking food out of the mouth of babes. He's literally sinking the 100 million people into poverty. Because where is that money? It's not circulating in Nigeria. It's not circulating in the middle belt. It's being sucked out of it. And the food supply is being strangled by, once again, the Fulani. Again, we're just repeating what is going on. Okay? We were looking at the video, and this is independent. This is independent account from a very credible source, Bernard Henri Levy, and the senior advisor to a U.S. representative. That's where this information is coming from, folks. So I am going to go back just a little bit. So let's hear this again, because it is important.
Real resistance, particularly under Hillary Clinton when she was Secretary of State, and Doug Carson, the Assistant Secretary for Africa, to designate Boko Haram as a foreign terrorist organization. To give credit where it's due, that changed when John Kerry was Secretary of State and when Thomas Greenfield became Assistant Secretary. And Boko Haram was designated a foreign terrorist organization. a positive and also get into a negative. We now realize that Boko Haram and its offshoots, such as Islamic State West Africa, such as Ansaru, are Islamists with an agenda that they're committed to mass atrocities, and that has become an accepted view, whereas before it was not. It was resisted and fought. The problem here, though, I think, is that now it's very convenient to put all extremism in Nigeria and West Africa, for that matter, more broadly, into the Boko Haram basket and its other affiliated or splinter organizations, and not to address the larger agenda of Fullonization. And it's also, I think, there's also a lack of historical knowledge as well. Those that are familiar with the history of Nigeria understand the role that Usman Dan Fodio played in West Africa, going back into the late 18th, early 19th century, and the expansion of the caliphate, the Sultanate of Sokoto in Nigeria. And what's interesting is that the other groups, such as the Kanuri, they were already Muslim. They were then displaced by that. The British imperial expansion checked that, and that, you had this generally, in rough terms, Christians in the south, Muslims in the north, but it's far more divided, as I said earlier. It's not, we certainly don't want to lump all Fulani, but, by and large, this is driven by Fulani's ethno-religious chauvinism, and it can be directed towards Muslims as well. But it is an agenda that has existed really since the 18th century. I would encourage those to work.
Okay, so I will stop that there. It's very clear. And he actually made reference to the fact of what we've been talking about. When you remove history, even the indigenes themselves, right? Even the indigenes themselves don't even know that the Fulanis are not Nigerian ancestral.
That's how successful they were.
Yes, because then they coined the House of Fulani to make it as if the Fulani already existed. No, the houses are indigent. But they were subjugated and they've been brought under the control of the Fulani Caliphate in the north. We know this. That is history. And he mentioned Ottoman Dan Fodio. That is history. That's when they came to Nigeria, is the 18th century. They were not in Nigeria prior to that.
Could I say something?
And here we are, having these people that don't own any assets in Nigeria ancestrally, now controlling everything in Nigeria, have created apartheid in Nigeria using that fictitious and actually it's fraudulent 1999 constitution, which was not made by the people.
Could I say something?
Go ahead.
Yeah. Nnamdi Kanu, when Nnamdi Kanu had his network and he was on, he jokingly said it, but it was actually true. He said, if you look at the very bottom of the government, all of them, most of them, the top wigs are Fulani. He went through a whole list. In fact, even showed the list at one point. More than 20 names, all of them top posts.
Right. We have, I mean, that's information that has been out there and has been communicated. And yes, he definitely talked about that, right? This is information that's been talked about. Nines has been since 1999. When that fraudulent constitution came up, has been out there fighting to let Nigerians understand what the dangers were, to let them understand that what happened in 1966 was just a preamble. And that Ojukwu, what he was trying to do was to restore the sovereignty of the people. It was about restoring the sovereignty. And not about, Igbo power. Now the Yorubas are recognizing that. The Midwesterners are recognizing that. The Hausas are recognizing that. The Yorubas are recognizing that. That what happened is that the caliphate has now stolen their assets. And it's trying to steal their water. You guys remember the
water bill? Water bill? What
They want
resources
to steal
there?
all the water. And not just take the water, but bring in Fulani herdsmen to those waterways, to the exclusion of the owners of the land. This is the plan of the federal government. Not the waterways, I think it's 7 miles on each side, and bring in Fulani herdsmen to take control of all the waterways in Nigeria. So now they will have the land, which they're given to foreign Fulani through Ruga. You know, we'll look at that. We'll look at that video again, where that is actually happening, right? Because I mean, this is crazy. So when we on today, this day, when the indigenous Nigerians are supposed to be celebrating their independence, they are enslaved, which is what apartheid means. They're enslaved. They don't own they don't have control of the oil that is underneath their own soil. This is controlled by Fulani. They don't have control of the federal government, Fulani, of INEC, which handles the
elections.
That's Fulani. Census, Fulani. Defense, Fulani. Armed forces, Fulani.
The ports, Lagos port, Fulani.
It's Fulani. This is what apartheid means. And we're hearing it from Bernard Henri Levy. He was very clear. And Mr. Piero Torzi did a fantastic job of actually calling out what's going on, calling out the history of what has happened. That these foreigners, these migrants, have now come in and taken control of the assets of the indigenous people. And we're still killing them. We're still killing them, right? So we don't want to digress into that. We want to just kind of stay focused on the fact that the independence of these nations has been
hijacked.
It's been hijacked. And they are asking for their independence back. But no one is listening. And because no one is listening, let's look at the plight. What is actually happening to these indigenous people? We've shown the numbers, but they're suffering under apartheid, similar to what happened in South Africa. Genocide is going on. We've broadcast tons and tons and tons of headlines talking about the ignored genocide of Christians and modern Muslims going on in Nigeria today. Bernard Henri Levy said it, that the world needs to put strong sanctions on Buhari's government because of this genocide that's going on. We have over 52% living in poverty, and 9 million of them at the verge of death from poverty. We've got injustice. The United Nations Special Rapporteur, twice in 2019 and 2020, both indicated that the constitutional arrangement was a powder keg of injustice. And this is where Fulani herdsmen are not arrested, and if they are let go to go free and not prosecuted. And Amnesty International was very clear when they came out and talked about the fact that these terrorists, these Fulani, are being allowed to go free and they must be held accountable. These are all, right? These are all credible sources.
These
are all credible sources, and yet nothing is happening. Under massacre, gunmen in Nigeria enjoy impunity, must face justice. Amnesty International. There has been no justice. Lekki happened. What about the, let's talk about the International Criminal Court. International Criminal Court. Because they had a lot to say, right? They had a lot to say about what was going on in Nigeria. What was the role of Boko Haram, and what was the role of the government, right? Let's see what they had to say in 2020. I mean, these are all things by credible organizations making these powerful statements, and it is just laying there. ICC set to investigate Nigeria, Boko Haram for rape, war crimes, murder, others. Because she indicated that there's reasonable basis to believe that the Nigerian armed forces had committed crimes against humanity that rises to the level of war crimes. And we see these crimes happening every day. It's in the newspapers. And again, the sad part is that not even all of these are being reported. Not even all of it is being reported, because there is a lack of freedom of press, freedom of speech, freedom of religion in Nigeria. This is what the indigenous people are suffering under. And so and I want to make an analogy here. I'm going to make an analogy here. Okay? Because we see what was going on in Ukraine. We see what was going on in Ukraine. The difference between how the Ukrainian citizens reacted and how the Nigerian citizens are reacting is simple. In the Ukraine, they understand they are one nation. They understand who they are and who all are the other actors in their country. In Nigeria, history has been eliminated from the schools. And the majority of the people are not educated that are in the villages, so they don't even know these facts. So while the Ukrainians could come together and mount a resistance because they know who the enemy is, a lot of the Nigerians in the villages don't even know that the Fulani are the ones who are perpetrating these crimes. Well, they know that they are, but they don't even understand that they're not even Nigerians. They're not ancestral Nigerians. They're not indigenous Nigerians. And I'm not going to lay this all up on the Fulani, because you know we've got the politics. We've got politicians. We've got governors, senators, House of Reps, etc., etc., etc. Why are they operating under this fraudulent Nigeria and not calling for the referendum that all these organizations are calling for, so that Nigeria can be set, restored, can be reverted, so that the people can regain their voice? Because right now we are operating under Military Decree 24. Military Decree 24. So you've got injustice, and it's been pointed out by the UN, it's been pointed out by the International Criminal Court, it's been pointed out by Amnesty. You've got marginalization and inequity. You've got people displaced from their lands, and they're living in squalor. But Boko Haram repentant. Fulani herdsmen unprosecuted. Enjoy their freedom. They enjoy money that they get from banditry. Let's not confuse anyone. Fulani herdsmen, bandits, kidnappers, all the same. Katsina governor told us that. Sokoto Sultan said 80% of the people committing these crimes are Fulani. I'm not making these up. These are headlines. These are statements that were made, and we've shared those on here. So the lack of citizen benefits. So we have benefits that citizens are supposed to have, but it says that the court,
No.
the court cannot hear any.
No.
any cases. So then
No.
that means the citizens have no benefits, they have no rights
No, no, no,
under
no,
this
no, no.
constitution. Where are all these constitutional lawyers around the world who are working pro bono? These human rights constitutional attorneys. You guys need to take up the case of the indigenous Nigerians. We're calling on you, take up this case. Read this constitution is very easy to read. We're calling on investigative journalists. Read this constitution, then read the prior constitutions and see what's going on. So we've got terror and death at the hands of Fulani husband and starvation that is going on. Balade, go ahead.
Yeah, I wanted to say I saw an incident on in Lagos recently, and this incident was that they intercepted a group of Fulanis in vans, and they found that they had weapons, explosives, and all sorts. And then they were going to hand them over to the police. Then the police now said, "What happened? Did they tell you they're vigilantes?" And the people were wondering, they're vigilantes here in Lagos, in Ikorodu, not Lagos. It's the upper part of Lagos anyway. That's why I said it. They said, these people are supposed to be part of us, yet they don't speak our language. So how are they supposed to be vigilantes from this area? But this is what the police told them, that what happened? They turn around and tell you they're vigilantes, because the government and their organizations, the police, the army, are in cahoots with all these people, and they've been told certain things. Oh, when you come across people that the people say are bandits, Fulanis, or cookie, no, you tell them no. That is not the case. These are ordinary civilians, and they're the ones stopping them performing their legal rights. So our rights, and like you just said, in the Constitution, it leaves all your civil rights that you've got. But in the same Constitution, if you go back in the middle of it, it tells you you ain't got no rights. So what are we climbing to this Constitution for, which is telling us we ain't got nothing under it, and people are still saying we want to go on that? Because next year, what happens? We just renew this fraudulent constitution.
Absolutely.
For the next 4 years.
Absolutely. Again, let's be clear, right? Yeah, it's not everyone that's going to be going to this, and it just makes it tougher, right? It just makes it tougher for the freedom movement to set Nigeria right. It is clear, because let's talk about, again, let me kind of finish the thought that when I was talking about Ukraine. If Nigerians understood fully, and I'm talking about indigenous Nigerians, understood fully that there were nations, look behind me, you were nations, right? If they understood that there were nations and that those nations have been taken away from them, they would be definitely speaking up and having, and being very vocal. But part of our challenge is the fact, that because of the economic strangulation, because of the fact that the history has been hidden from the youth, that they don't understand what's going on. And I love to see the fact that the nation has been re-energized because Obi is running for president. But Obi needs to understand what is sitting in front of us right now. Nigeria is not a federation. The Nigeria of the independence is dead. Of the 1960, they should say 1960. Of the 1960 independence is dead.
It's dead, gone.
It died in 1966 and has not been revived. These are nations. So all of you that are watching this, when you have an opportunity to speak to the OB political machine.
Obedience.
And the tribunalized and
Tinubu,
dearticulated,
whatever. Yeah.
whatever they
Emilio Kan.
are. This
My turn.
has
It's
to
my
be,
turn.
this is the problem in Nigeria.
The
That
Jagaban.
1999 Constitution has hijacked these nations. This is what the problem is in Nigeria.
The Jagaban. Emilio Kan. It's my turn. He's talking about it like it's his God-given right, you know. Like,
And you heard the Northern Elders. We have the number, so we're going to rule forever, right? That's not a democracy. That's the very reason Nigeria was not set up as unitary. And that proves that the indigenous Nigerians, because those Northern Elders are Fulani, that the indigenous Nigerians, the Hausas, the Middle Belters, the Midwesterners, the Southeasterners, the Southerners, the Southwesterners, have had their independence hijacked. They cannot and should not be celebrating independence today because that independence died in 1966. This is important for our people to know. Independence died in 1966. We need to get our independence back. And so I'm calling on the United Kingdom. I'm calling on the United States. I'm calling on Germany. I'm calling on the United Nations and all the countries of the United Nations. The Charter of the United Nations is to protect the self-determinations of nations. Here it is in Nigeria. Where is the protection? Where is the protection? Where is the restoration? Where is the condemnation of a nation that have strangulated, that is committing genocide of these indigenous nations? Where is the condemnation? Where are the sanctions? Where's the outrage? I'm calling on Joe Biden personally. Because Joe Biden, you were outraged by what was going on in South Africa. Well, worse than South Africa is going on in Nigeria. Where is your voice? Kamala Harris, where is your voice? I'm calling on all Black people around the globe. Open your eyes. Where is the African Union? Where is ECOWAS? Where's the Organization of African Unity? Where is their voices to stop what is going on in Nigeria, to stop this genocide, to speak up? Nobody is speaking up. Let's not even start talking about the Christians. Where's the Pope? Where is Justin Welby, the Archbishop of Canterbury from the US? I mean, in the United Kingdom.
I think
where are they?
All these leaders, especially the African leaders, they just tend to back each other up. But one thing happened to them last week was when all of them could not be in their motorcages in London. They had to get on a bus like any other ordinary person. I felt.
Well, let's not talk about Nigeria asking for loan forgiveness and taking 100 people with all that ESTA code, with all the the flashy cars, the expensive hotels. Okay.
No, let's not go there.
Let's not talk about, and then let's talk about what about the compensation, right? The compensation that the political class, they're eating up over 80% of Nigeria's wealth. The political class, over 80%. Well, when you do your debt service, what is left for a common man? Nothing. Nothing is left. They have the audacity. Why have they not cut their pay? Everybody that is getting, how can you get pension when you're still in the Senate?
Yeah.
How can you get, in Lagos, Tinubu is paying himself 300% of his salary. You're retired, 300%. Six cars. Is it every 3 years or every 6 years?
He doesn't even retire. He's a governor. He's no more. He's no more the governor.
300% of his salary. 300%.
Yeah, my
So
sister
what
can't
is
get
left for the common man? What is left
nothing.
for the masses? And the world is sitting back and saying, what, this is corruption? What is corruption? This is murder by greed. It's murder. It's second-degree murder. Every single child that is dying of hunger in Nigeria is second-degree murder from the political wages and compensation that they're getting. Simple and short.
Somebody said that mostly all these Western nations, really, they had nothing, and what they have and what they're even living on now is our
well, we know that there's no gold in England.
Oh yeah.
So all that gold that they have in their reserves, we know it came from Black people.
Yeah, they'll talk about the
it came from Black people. So we don't want to go there. We want to focus on the independence that the ethnic nations in Nigeria must have. It was negotiated, it was the agreement, and the Fulani Caliphate, backed by the British government, have put Unitary Nigeria in place, have sustained Unitary Nigeria to the detriment of millions of young children who are growing up without food, shelter, school. The direct result of Unitary Nigeria, a direct result. There's no such thing as Huda-farmer conflict. That can be solved, people. And if the world is telling us that I don't see the those that are having cattle in California, in the desert area of California or Arizona, marching their cattle to the farmlands and destroying it.
I think
any country to show me where they are allowing that.
They're more sophisticated than that because they've been free already ages ago.
Again, that's what I'm trying to say.
And in fact, we've been free ages ago.
Who are killing and destroying. How can you pamper them? Why are you not supporting those that are being killed and those that their farms are being destroyed? Where's the support?
I think
for those that have lost their independence to these foreigners.
I think
they can get Nigerian citizenship, but at the end of the day, they are not indigenous. They don't own the oil, but they are benefiting. They are taking all the wealth from the indigenes. That's what's happening. We look at the leadership of Nigeria. We've shown this before, right? We see how grossly many are from the north. And when I say north, we mean obviously Fulani.
Fulani.
We're not talking about Hausas because they have no rights.
Nope.
We're talking about Fulani.
I said
this is egregious.
I might have been talking out of turn in that. I'm thinking, well, if the situation in Nigeria is the situation in Nigeria, then let everybody, like what sometimes we say, let everybody bear his father's name. So you people go back and say, this is our land. This thing is in our land, the oil. We want to fight for it, and we say you guys are out of it. We don't want you here. We don't want you. We're not telling you you can't write a check for any oil here anymore. You can't because it's not yours.
Okay, let's talk about NNPC now that you brought that up. NNPC. Mile Kairi, GMD, Umar Ajayi, Chief Finance Officer, Yusuf Osman, Chief Operating Officer, Farouk Garba Saeed, Chief Operating Officer, Mustafa Yakubu, Chief Operating Officer, Hadiza Komaisi, Corporate Secretary, Omar Ibrahim, Group Manager, Group General Manager, Kalamu Abdullahi, GGM, Renewable Energy, Ibrahim Burma, GGM, Governance, Bala Wunti, GGM, Inua Waya, MD, NNPC Shipping, Musa Lawan, okay? And then continue.
Any more?
Mansour Sambo, Lawal Sadeh, Malami Shehu, Muhammad Abba, Abdul Qadir Ahmed, Salihu Jamari, Mohammed Zango, Seriki. These are the top.
Yeah.
In NMPC. These are the top.
These are the top people.
Yes.
And not a single person from the South in there.
No.
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 And
this
that's so
is
fair.
apartheid. United, you know, I keep saying this because I saw the video of the UK Parliament member saying, oh, the problem of Nigeria is corruption.
Oh no. No.
The problem of Nigeria, yes, there is corruption, but it's the corruption that was made official in the 1999 Constitution. And no, it is not an internal issue. The Fulani don't originate in Nigeria. That is a fact.
They're never part of us.
Parliament and UK House of Lords. You know it yourselves.
But
and it's very disingenuous for the UK, especially the UK, that knows exactly what's going on in Nigeria, to let this continue to happen.
Some people have said we're going to have to solve this problem ourselves, and I totally agree.
Well,
but we
not really. You cannot.
Yeah, that's what I'm going.
But this is what I was trying to say earlier, Balade, is that the Nigerians have to rise up. But it's going to take a lot of educating. And we don't have the money to be able to be in the news.
we don't have the time.
We don't have the money. The money has been controlled for the longest time, for 56 years. All the money has been controlled by the Fulani Caliphate.
I was trying to say recently, I said, I think, this is what I think, and I think it's most likely to happen. Between the British and the Fulani, they control everything. They know what's going to go on from day one to day two. So between them, it's their power base that they're doing things in that power. We are only seeing, a president come out, he rules and he does this, does that, and that. No, what's really holding this thing together is the British with their operatives, the Fulani, that are coming to this stuff. Because there was something the Yorubas did in America, New York. They now flew a drone around in New York to highlight their plight. And then they went to the Nigerian embassy and he says, as you can see, all these people there, they work with the Nigerian government, Nigerian embassy. He said, most of them, see what they're wearing. They're wearing Fulani Hausa stroke dresses. He said, we work in all the places in America. You would never see any of them work in these places. And it's the same thing over here in England. You see Igbos, Yoruba, Middle Belters, all these people, you see them. But you will never see somebody say, oh, I'm a Fulani from Nigeria, I work here. We don't see that because they're in the embassy. They never did any work. They're down in the embassy, just signing on and getting salary. And we can't do that. Nobody else in Nigeria can do that. Or from Nigeria can do that.
Well, let's take a look. There's one more thing that I want to show before we get off here, because there is something that came out in 2021. It was in 2021 that it came out, and it was talking about the fact that this is crazy, but let me pull this up. This is crazy. Because this is the kind of thing that continues to surface in Nigeria, as we keep bringing foreign Fulani into Nigeria as Nigerians. Let's take a look at this. I mean, some of these things are just outright blatant, Look at this. Niger Republic and Chad are part of Nigeria. Now we understand why 9 billion naira was given to Chad for security, while the states in Nigeria
can't get nothing.
Any money for security from the federal government. I shouldn't just cut them up. No, they have you know, they have family in those places and they shouldn't cut them out. And yet the family of the Yoruba, the family of the Igbo, the family of the Ijo, the family of the Middle Belter, the family of the Bayelsa in Nigeria are dying of hunger. But the Fulani is feeding and paying 100% of the cost of ranches and 100% of land, because it's free land, to foreign Fulani. And we watched that video a lot of times. Maybe we should watch it again. We can look at Bala Mohammed again, right? Let's see. Let me find the shortened one that that was put together. That, you know, that just kind of shows, you know, that, I mean, because these things are just egregious. They are absolutely egregious. And these are things. It's now out in the open, and yet nobody in the international community apparently.
I think
apparently is paying attention.
I think it's you know, there's a member of this club, and basically you remember this club. Okay, we know what you've done, but we won't say if nobody says it. So if people don't bring it to them, they don't say it. If people bring them, oh, we didn't know that. Is that what's really happened? We might do something about that, but then they don't do nothing. Because you've got all these
yeah, I'm trying. Oh, this is wrong.
Okay.
Hang on a second. I want to
communicate with them more.
I'm trying to bring this up, but I'm not seeing.
We can't see it.
Yeah, I know. Just give me a second. I'm trying to stop it and start it. Okay, I'm not really sure how to stop this. Oh, I see it. Okay, here we go. Let me show it. Because this is just egregious. It is egregious. It is totally egregious. Okay, here we go.
While at the same time bringing the Fulanis in one fold and try to arrest their traditional practice of moving from one place to the other. And that is a very big, an uphill task. But I think we can communicate with them more, because to them, they don't have borders from Cameroon to Nigeria.
But that's the thing, Excellency. How do we ensure that those who will be participating in this federal government largely funded program will be Nigerians?
In terms of the funding?
No, in terms of
the operations.
Operations.
When there is a reprisal, it is not the planning man within Nigeria that causes it. It is that culture of getting revenge, which is embedded in the tradition of the Fulani man, that attracts reprisal from all over the
If I understand, does that mean that those Fulani men who are maybe domiciled in other countries who move around, they can come into the country and this plan will accommodate them as well?
Yes, that's what we want to do, while at the same time bringing the Fulani and try to
are you guys, did you guys listen to that?
Yeah, he said something which basically a video on a different series just brought out. You know, there's these Fulani, they believe when they have gone on their jihad or whatever, and maybe some of their people get killed, well, they should if they win, they should now be able to take people as slaves or whatever, spoils of war.
Absolutely. But let's focus on what he said, because it is what he said that's important. They want to bring all the Fulani in one fold. That's called Fullonization of Nigeria. They want to bring all Fulani from around Africa, because supposedly the Fulani is the only group of people in this world that are borderless. They can come into Nigeria, claim Nigeria. They can go into Ghana, claim Ghana. They can actually, I guess, in any country in Africa, claim it, and it would be theirs because they are borderless. But in this one particular instance, the plan is to bring them all into Nigeria in one fold. Wait, is Nigeria empty land? Did I miss that Nigeria is empty land? Is it virgin land with no people who were there before? No, there are indigenes in Nigeria. So now we can understand when Danjuma is talking about the ethnic cleansing that is going on in Nigeria. It becomes very clear to us. So let's listen to that. Because I mean, like, these are things that must be addressed, that must be constantly, right? It has to be constantly in the front of the world. And this is why we show these things over and over again, because as many people as hear it must share it.
There's an attempt at ethnic cleansing in this state, and of course, in all states. We must resist it. We must. And this state is unanswered.
This is what the world needs to understand, right? This is what the world needs to understand. And then, well, let's watch the next one, okay? Because if the indigenes, because he's talking about the indigenes in all the riverine areas from the middle belt down to the south, ethnic cleansing, that's what's going on. And he is a credible, very credible person. We had Melafia, who was a former governor for the Central Bank of Nigeria, right?
Yeah,
he
I think
came
I've
out
heard
and
what
he
he
talked about what was going on.
Yeah,
right?
he did.
And then he also talked about the complicity of the government. So let's listen to what Danjuma had to say about that. And you guys need to forgive me because I'm trying to do this and show it at the same time. It's a little bit more challenging when you're trying to do all of that yourself. But let's listen to what he has to say about the government, and then we're going to look to see what Bernard Henri Levy had to say.
Must rise up. The armed forces are not neutral. They collude. They collude. They collude with the government bandits.
That audio is failing.
What, can you not hear the audio?
No, the audio is failed. It's not. I can't hear it anymore.
Okay, give me a second then. I'm gonna have to fix it. Let me stop sharing. You can go ahead and speak, Balade, while I fix that.
Basically,
Let's talk about government complicity in this whole breakdown of
okay,
the,
government
dependence of people.
complicity stems from the fact that they, Wari and Co, believe, or have told us anyway, that these Fulani herdsmen and Boko Haram are their kingsmen, and they're not.
They are their kingsmen. They are Fulani.
They are not going to leave them out. So basically, when these people do something, that, oh, you know what? He's our man. He's just behaving like what that Mohammed Balo was saying. Oh, the Fulani, he wants his revenge. He always wants his revenge. You do something to him, he wants his revenge. They are not part of. They're not us. They're not Nigerian Fulanis. No. But they are Fulanis. But anything happens, they want their revenge.
Yep.
So
it's
embedded
in their DNA.
Embedded in their
so
DNA.
it is okay. Just because you're murderous, that means that okay?
That is what they're trying to tell us. That it's okay because we're a murderous lot. And the funny thing, it now explains what used to happen in Lagos, where you used to have these Hausa Yoruba clashes going on locally. It wasn't just Yoruba Hausa. It was mainly these Fulanis doing it, because the Yorubas and the Hausas, they've been getting on like how to put it, like one another. They go. I mean, how many times had my dad, when he was working, used to go up north before I even ventured up north? I just said, "Oh, Dad used to go up north. They're nice people. I'll go up north." And really, we didn't have a problem with them once they affected you. But the only thing I found out was that if you're not ready to take on their ways, which I wasn't, you're not really going to go that further. And my dad told me when I got back, he said, because you weren't ready to take on their ways, that's why you didn't get on. I said, Dad, you wasn't going to take on their ways. It was a non-starter for me.
Yeah, okay, I'm trying to find that, but on really how to do the volume. Let me see if I can, because there's supposed to be, there's 3 things here where we can, where we can do the volume, which I am not seeing at this minute. So, okay, I'm not seeing that. So anywho, let's just go ahead and start wrapping up here.
Okay.
The important thing to remember is that the Nigeria of 1960, 1963 died in 1966 at the second coup. And the marginalization, the apartheid of the indigenous people has been made whole, not all the way whole, because the water resources bill, they didn't take the water in the Constitution. They're trying to do it now. They have taken, they have made it whole, almost complete, in that fraudulent 1999 Constitution, which is Military Decree 24.
Whoa.
Because they have that 64 item exclusive list and the 30 or 33 semi-exclusive, which at the end of the day is still exclusive. So all the assets of the indigenous people and now in the hands of the federal government, which is not a federal government because it is unitary, and that federal government is controlled wholly by Fulani, who are not indigenous to Nigeria. Hence the apartheid we're talking about.
You said something. You said something about why are these constitutional lawyers not talking about this constitution?
Where are they?
Where are they? And I would say, why don't we take this thing to all these conventional lawyers and say, well, here's the Nigerian constitution. What do you think about it?
Exactly.
And then go to our lawyers in Nigeria and say, well, we've been told that this thing is not worth the paper it's printed on. And you know about it, what you're going to do about it? Because we think.
Well, I'm like, the world needs to respond to this, I mean, everyone keeps saying, oh, yeah, we have to do it in Nigeria. Well, you know what? If you don't have support,
you can't do it.
If you do not have support of the international community,
you can't do it.
That's not a whole lot that we're going to do. We're going to keep being killed. Okay. So we're talking about the stolen sovereignty. So the major earning sectors and the ethnic nationality, NMPC Fulani, FIRS Fulani, NCS Fulani, MPA Fulani, Defense Fulani, Finance Fulani, Education Fulani, Justice Fulani, Federal Capital Fulani, Agriculture Fulani, Police Affairs Fulani, Aviation Fulani, Communication Fulani, Power Fulani, Water Resources Fulani, Humanitarian Affairs Fulani, FORMA Fulani, NYSC Fulani, PTDF Fulani, NTA Fulani, FAAN Fulani. Okay.
That's a bit funny there.
I think that kind of wraps up.
Yeah, that kind of wraps it up, basically. But then I would also say, in the struggle for this thing, since the British were involved in it anyway, we got to put them on board and just say, you know what, you got to be there because you caused part of it, or they must have caused it anyway. So we could say, well, Britain, you got to be at this table when all this stuff is being sorted out, so that we can get a. But the funny thing is that they will stab us in the back again, and they're only there so that we can say, we need you to help us sort it out. But I don't think
the United Nations has the charter to protect indigenous nations.
Oh yes, we've been
these are nations. I mean, like, we've proven this over and over and over again. It's in the constitutional agreement.
Yeah, we have,
and it doesn't exist today because of the military action and the apartheid constitution, quote unquote constitution, which is Military Decree 24. So why isn't the UN
and talking about it?
in 1967 going, wait a minute. What happened to these nations that we just saw? Where have they gone?
Yeah.
Why isn't the US asking the question? Why is the US allowing this Fullonization agenda and Arabification agenda to continue? So the international community, what can they do? Put pressure on the government to go to referendum, sanction the government for killings,
the people,
freeze assets of the political elite, send the peacekeeping force. Why are there no peacekeeping forces? Demand that the government provide compensation to victims and return them to their land, to not another land, their land. Return all land to the indigenous people that have been forcibly taken by the federal government.
Like you said,
stop all arms sales.
Like
no
you
more
said,
arms sales to Nigeria.
Like you
it's
said,
being used against the people. Go ahead, Malade.
Like you said, the federal government, well, they've said, all right, you know what, here's all your rights, basically, guaranteed by the Constitution. But back in the middle of the country, they said, we don't offer you nothing. It's been proven. They've done it to Sunday Igbo and in the Bisikanu when they destroyed these people's property. They went to court. Court says you've got to pay reparations to these two men on their properties, which you decide. Federal government now went and said, oh, guess what? We owe them no money. We owe them no money because this and that. At one point they said they didn't have the money, but they're now saying we don't owe them the money anyway.
Yeah, but then they gave money. They gave money to Niger, right?
Exactly. They're behaving like Britain. They will say, oh, guess what? We haven't got this money to do at home, but we give 3 billion to Ukraine. So basically, and the funny thing is about Nigeria is that Nigeria can say he ain't got money till the cars come home. They're lying. They're loaded. Everybody knows it.
All the politicians are loaded. The
exactly.
politicians are loaded with Nigerian money. Okay, let's talk about what the indigenes can do so that we can wrap up. They need to contact their governors and other political parties down to the local government area and demand that their elected officials work towards a transition government that NINAS, as the Nigerian Indigenous Nationalist Alliance for Self-Determination, has been calling for, so we can go to referendum. Demand that the states start protecting their people, given that the federal government has said that they cannot, will not, are not willing to control their own people, control their foreign Fulani. I mean, they're not even putting a law in place that Fulani herdsmen should not carry weapons. No. Indigenes are being disarmed and they're being warned not to pick up weapons. But Fulani herdsmen can carry AK-49s, AK-47s, AK, whatever number that they want, have all kinds of things to massacre the indigenous people.
Could I say something? When we were young in Lagos, when we grew up, we're not going to Lagos, just after this civil war, and you see all these, I want to say there must be Fulanis or houses as well. All of them used to have knives stuck to their arms, As time went on, it stopped. But at that time, they were like armed to the teeth, basically.
Yeah, well, you know, in Southern Kaduna, what happened in Southern Kaduna is that the government would go and disarm the people. All their machetes were taken. And then the following day, the Fulani herdsmen would attack. That was what happened in Southern Kaduna. And for the benefit of everybody else, Southern Kaduna is where you have the moderate Muslims and the Christians. That's not where you have, it's Northern Kaduna. It's never attacked. All Southern Kaduna. And what they've been doing in the news recently is to just say Kaduna. It's Southern Kaduna. It's not Northern Kaduna. You don't hear any attacks in far north Nigeria where the Fulanis live. There's no attacks in far north Nigeria. It's all from the middle belt down to the south.
Because they want to take you guys off. And basically in Kaduna recently, there was after this kind of massacre, they now showed some reconstruction going on. And I thought to myself, reconstruction on other people's land that you've just taken them off their land.
Yes, they're putting Fulanis on other people's land who are in IDPs, not even in Kaduna. The IDPs are in the
Northern Nigeria,
Benue.
northeastern
Benue has
Nigeria.
20. Yeah, they don't want IDPs because they want Kaduna to be fully Fulonized.
Yes.
So, I mean, again, we're not saying things, that we're making up. You heard the white man. Yes, Black people, y'all like to listen to white people. Okay.
Yeah.
You heard the white man, Piero Tosi. You heard him. He was talking about the Fullonization agenda that is going on in Nigeria. Yes, you heard him. You guys can share that video from here. You guys should share this video. You should share this program because it's important for our people to understand what is going on, because once they arise, the world will come alongside us. When South Africa, when the leaders made enough noise, the world came alongside them. We need more Nigerians to be up and doing, up and talking.
I got something funny to say, yeah. But
Okay.
Tinubu, he said a couple of things. One thing he said, we're gonna need 50 million soldiers to sort out this problem in Nigeria. There are not 50 million soldiers under commands anywhere in the world. And totally, there's not 50 million. So I don't know what he's talking about. Then he was saying about, what do you think these kids are gonna eat? So can you eat them corn, cassava? And
I know, I saw that. They're going to give them cassava and corn.
And corn.
This is nutrition for indigents. This is crazy. I saw that and I was like, no, that is way too crazy.
That's his mentality. I don't know. And somebody told me this guy went to university in America.
It is way too crazy. It is way, way, way too crazy. So today is a sad day.
Very sad day.
It was a day that was joyful, as we heard Amada Bello, who turned out to be a snake.
Yeah.
We heard him talking about the self-determination, and that self-determination was killed in 1966. We're saying hijacked because once it exists, it should be restored. And so that's why, different organizations have been calling on the UN to restore. They need to restore these nations. And that has to happen via referendum because we need to give the people an opportunity. They need to have an opportunity to determine what, because the system that existed then doesn't exist now. And so we need the opportunity. The Yoruba, the Middle Belt, the Lower Niger nations must be restored now. And for the benefit of those who are saying, what about Ijaw? What about Lower Niger is going to be a federation of nations. Middle Belt is supposed to be a federation of nations. Yoruba is more homogeneous, so they are going to be one nation, right? But Middle Belt, Lower Niger nations are going to be a federation of nations, okay? Where everyone would find themselves. So this is a demand that was made, at the, they had the truck out at the UN at UNGA, and making sure that we can restore these indigenous nations. So I want to thank everyone that joined us today. Please see that you share this video widely. Please see that even if you just take the portions of the videos, the little portions that we're sharing so that people will understand exactly what's going on, that would be fantastic and would really move our freedom movement forward. So I want to commiserate. I want to congratulate our forefathers that worked very hard to get independence and to put a system in place that would actually work for that union called Nigeria.
Okay.
And now I am calling on their descendants to rise up and restore what their forefathers and what the world agreed was the right formula for the union called Nigeria. And it was not Unitary Nigeria. You must rise up now and let your voices be heard. And while you're at it, you gotta put your money where your mouth is, because if we don't have media, if we don't have the opportunity to get PR companies that will take our message and make it a global message, then we're not going to be as successful, and a heck of a lot more people are going to die. A heck of a lot more people are going to be killed by Unitary Nigeria. So join us on Saturdays. We are actually going to go to once a month because we've got a lot of other things to do, and putting this program together takes quite a bit. So we're going to be going to once a month, but we will be rebroadcasting on a weekly basis. The prior messages that we have sent out, we will be rebroadcasting those. And then once a month, at the beginning of the month, we will have a live program. So thank you all very much for joining us. And remember, indigenous nations of Nigeria needs you to speak up, to stand up. And like Ukraine, you will have the world helping you out. Thank you all again, and have a great weekend.